just so we don't forget.
Cool. I'm going to go grab a little more water.
Yep.
Water.
Amy, you and I match.
We do. Yeah, the Amy's match.
You kind of wear that every day.
Sorry?
Is it your uniform?
Yes. Yes. We wear every day. No, it's perfect for these virtual meetings because it's nice and it's also very comfortable.
I actually put real pants on. I don't just have yoga pants on. I have one student who shows up for virtual class every day, and he's just kind of a hilarious kid anyway, but he's got a big flannel plaid bathrobe, and every day he's joining in his bathroom.
That's awesome.
My kids all have these webcams on their kind of computer towers for gaming, probably, so it sort of shoots down on them. And when they came back to school in October, the few kids that came back, I was like, oh my gosh, you're like 6'3". I thought you were about 5'4" because I've been looking down. I mean, they render really short. This kid, Tim Mao, is just sprouting up. This young lady named Willow White, who's a total knucklehead. I thought she was this little sprightly thing. She walks in, her hair's sort of dyed green gray. She's about 5'11". It's like, okay, you're Willow. I expected sort of a willowy little thing. She's very tall, like very into everything. But the first quiz I gave them was like about nature science. She just started writing all these ideas about they were supposed to look at E. coli counts and make a claim based on whether it's safe to swim there or not, based on E. coli counts. And she started talking about, are the rocks slippery? I wonder what fish are in there. And was like, I had to email her dad or call her dad. I'm like, I don't know what to do here. Your daughter's clearly really smart, but she just didn't answer any of the questions that I asked her to. It's like she made a joke of the thing. She's like, well, give it to her again and we'll see what happens. So she got closer to the mark, but kid's a nut, a total nut.
So we have 4 people so far. At least we have 4 breakout.
Yeah, stick them on their own.
Breakout room.
We got 5 now. We got a party.
There's more of us than there are of them.
I know. It's like an old Levee Breakers gig.
I don't know what I did with my mouse.
I had 12 on Thursday for Pam and I. That was 2. So you got 5 folks over the week.
AP classroom. They were nice. We had fun.
My dogs are conked out.
Javier, are your kids in school? Are your kids school age or not yet?
Yes, yeah, they are 9 and 13, so very much so.
Very
yeah.
Good. Are they in live school or are they home?
No, they're home. They're home. All Zoom. Yeah, and the younger one, he's been tough for, yeah. She decided that she decided for some time that she didn't need to go to math class. So she's like a math class, didn't send.
Yeah, math, who needs it, right?
Didn't send any assignments for like 2-3 weeks.
All right, so right at 1 o'clock, we'll go ahead and admit people. So those people can come on in, and we'll give a maybe like a 60-second grace period for everybody to get in, get settled, and anybody else who's just clicking the link now to come on in before Ty makes his announcements.
Ty's going to start us off.
All right, welcome everyone coming in. We're just going to give people about 45 more seconds to trickle in here. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. This session is being recorded per NSTA recording policies. Should you wish to opt out of recording, please turn off your camera and mute your microphone. The chat feature is enabled for this session. The session will also use breakout rooms. Here is the Google folder where you can locate this session's materials. And with that, I'll hand things over to Amy and Ryan.
All right. Well, hey, y'all, thank you so much for coming and joining us this afternoon. It's noon for me. I'm in Alabama, and also noon for Amy. She's up in Wisconsin. And we're going to spend about 45 minutes telling the story of Island Biogeography with film and data points from HHMI BioInteractive.
Hi guys, let's go ahead and get started. Couple of workshop goals. We are going to explain and explore the foundational studies that led to Wilson and MacArthur's development of island biogeography theory. We're going to help you build a conceptual model to understand the different factors that go into the species area relationship. In our breakout rooms, give you an opportunity to analyze some graphs and look for patterns and make a claim about that relationship, and then see how we can apply island biogeography theory to current conservation ecology undertakings. Just a couple of meeting norms: if you would leave your audio muted, and again, feel free to use the chat feature as we're going through the presentation today. I am Amy Fassler. I teach in Marshfield, Wisconsin, at a kind of a rural high school. My main teaching subject and the place where I use the island biogeography theory resources is in AP Environmental Science. And in addition to being an ambassador for HHMI, I do some work for the College Board.
Cool. Hey, y'all, I'm Ryan Reardon. I am down at the Jefferson County International Baccalaureate School in Irondale, Alabama, and it's interesting. It's kind of, I had to change my title. I am a middle years program year 4 science teacher. So I've moved away from working with AP and IB students. I work exclusively with 9th graders now, and a course I designed called Life on Earth. I also teach a research and design principles class elected to my students. I've been with HHMI, I think, about 3.5, almost 4 years now. In a former life, I was a reader for the College Board. And during quarantine, I took on a second career as a bike builder and technician for a local bike shop. And welcome. And just a landing page. This is a screenshot of HHMI's website, BioInteractive's website. I hope you guys have all had an opportunity to check out the vast array of resources there. I love using HHMI because not only does it engage students with real data, it gives them a broader view of the way science works and the opportunity to do STEM and then also communicate STEM as a career. I actually like sort of the art and the narrative that goes into the making these resources as much as I like the science, and I try to expose my kids to those as often as I can.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Backwards.
Yes.
So thanks, Ryan. We're going to kind of set the stage for you and introduce you to the Island Biogeography resources by kind of taking you back in time a little bit to the work of a young biologist from Princeton, E.O. Wilson, and how he got started asking questions and found just a pretty cool place to do some scientific experimentation. So if you're not familiar with the film, Ants to Grizzlies, it's available on the HHMI website. And we're gonna show you just a short clip of that to get started here today.
It was during that period of exploration, I was also thinking about why different islands have different species and different numbers of species.
Wilson tallied the number of ant species on each island, and when he plotted them against the area of the island, he noticed an interesting relationship. An island that was 10 times bigger had twice as many species. On islands elsewhere, reptiles and amphibians showed a similar relationship.
There actually was rules, mathematical regularities, that nobody up until the 1960s had tried to reason out why it was like that.
Wilson discovered what he called a rule of thumb, a general relationship between the number of species on an island and its area. If this rule was indeed general, Wilson figured that if all the species were removed from an island, then the same number of species might repopulate it. But how could he test that? He suddenly remembered an extraordinary event.
On August the 27th, 1883, one of the greatest volcanic eruptions ever recorded laid waste to the Indonesian island of Krakatoa. Life on the island had been completely wiped out. That tragic event made Krakatoa the perfect laboratory in which to find out how species colonized and recreated an ecosystem.
Sorry.
That's all right. To the left.
There we go. I don't know why that opened in a separate screen, but thank you. So that's a pretty cool, engaging story to get students interested in the theory of island biogeography. And when I teach this with my students, I like to take a step back at that point and explain to them that, you know, Wilson talked about this being this general universal rule of ecology to understand how community ecology works. And as we move forward, it's important that our students understand that when we now talk about island biogeography theory, that we're defining an island, not just as a literal piece of land in the middle of water, but that island is a habitat island. It's an area of suitable habitat surrounded by a sea of unsuitable habitat. Mm-hmm. And Central Park in New York City is just a really good way, I think, to illustrate that concept to students.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. And I love seeing E.O. Wilson, or Ed as he likes to be called, as a young man. So when I met him, he was, you know, much older, almost as old as he was in that film. And I just have to take an issue with, from Harvard. He's actually from Mobile, Alabama. And having spent my whole career teaching in Alabama, we're real proud of Ed. What we want to do right now, you guys, is spend a minute or two looking at the model for the species richness that Wilson developed along with his collaborator. I think it's James MacArthur. I don't know the first name, and I apologize for that, but MacArthur was the mathematician that helped Ed Wilson sort of think about how this model would work mathematically. And the reason we know Wilson and not MacArthur now is because MacArthur died 5 years after they published this model in 1967. But I don't want to, enough about the history. Let's get oriented to this graph. The thing I want you to pay attention to is the x-axis, the number of species. On the left y-axis in blue, we've got the rate of immigration, and on the right y-axis, we've got the rate of extinction. A couple things to consider here. By rate of immigration, what we mean to say is, think about a group of organisms, a species that's going to happen upon an island, successfully colonize that island, and hang out for a while. That's what we're seeing. And so, Amy, if you could run that next curve again, that'd be great. Here's the simple idea. When there's no one on the island, if we think about what's happening on the left side of the x-axis, rate of immigration is high. You're going to get lots of migrants coming in. They may establish themselves. But as we move to the right on this y-axis, that island becomes more crowded. The rate of immigration goes down. And you'll notice the rate of extinction goes up. And I'm using air quotes because by extinction, what we mean to say is that species is unable to establish itself there. Its population size dwindles to nothing at that particular location. So the idea is pretty straightforward. As that island becomes more crowded, immigration rates go down, extinction rates go up. And Amy, if you click next, what we can do is find this equilibrium point where you'll get a predictable number of species for a given sized island. And so we'll call this a medium-sized island. Now, if we take that a step further, we'll notice on a smaller island, that rate of immigration decreases faster because there's less space. And conversely, Amy, if you hit the next one, I absolutely, thank you so much. That rate of extinction, or species getting knocked out of that niche space, increases much faster. And now we see a second equilibrium point for smaller islands. Notice that the medium-sized island could harbor more species than the small-sized one. We take this argument a step further. Let's think about a larger island. Notice here that the curve's a bit flatter. That rate of immigration is maintained higher even as the number of species increases. It's only as we move to the right that that rate of immigration decreases. Similarly, notice that that rate of extinction is dampened until you move to the right, and then only when that number of species gets really high does that rate of extinction tend to crank up exponentially. And here, again, we see a third equilibrium point. Larger islands tend to harbor more species. They have greater species richness. And if we can get rid of the curves for just a quick second, the way I like to explain this to my kids is just think about that x-axis. Low numbers of species, medium numbers of species, and high numbers of species relative to island size. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And if anybody has any questions, just throw them in the chat, and we'll kind of be keeping an eye on that. So hopefully you've got kind of a conceptual idea. Ryan gave a great explanation. There's a lot going on there. And we're going to give you an opportunity to work with some data points. If you're familiar with HHMI BioInteractive, data points is a type of activity created where students are looking at data and given some teacher prompts to help analyze that data. So these are just a couple of screenshots from the video. And in a couple of minutes, we're gonna put you into breakout rooms and let you all look at a different community and a kind of a different variable going on. But I just wanted to give you a little background of the I-squared strategy if you're not familiar with it. It's a BSCS model where students go through and identify and then help guide them through identifying the key variables on the graph and then interpreting the relationship between those variables. One thing that you may not be as familiar with, or certainly your students may not be, depending on what you teach and what level you have, is the idea of a logarithmic scale. So you can see the x-axis is clearly represented as a logarithmic scale. It's a non-linear scale that allows us to take a really broad range of data and put that on a scale so that they can see that range, or you know, that whole range of data across a very large scale. And the increments don't then have equal value, but are based on a base of that logarithm. In this case, a factor of 10. So in this example, the y-axis is also a logarithmic scale. Some of you may be looking at a semi-log graph where one of the axes is logarithmic and the other is linear. And we have a linear regression line put on there. In some of the graphs you look at, you may have some statistical data. And that just may be something that in your breakout room you can at least talk about. Is this something that my students could recognize and something I would direct them to? And then obviously you're going to be making some claims about the relationship that's shown there.
Yeah, and so in a second we're gonna get right to work. I want to spend a minute just thinking about what it is we're going to ask you to do in the 10 minutes that you'll have with your colleagues. In a moment, you'll be assigned to a breakout room. We ask that you make a note of the number of the breakout room that you've been assigned, because that's going to direct you to a particular document or data point. That number will appear in the chat. And then, again, you'll be in a group of 6. All 6 of you will receive one of 4 graphs to analyze, one of these data points. It's essentially got you'll have a narrative, you'll have the data itself, and you'll have a set of guiding questions just to kind of get you oriented to the graph, get you oriented to the data, and then there'll be a deliverable. The last 3 questions are what we want you to focus on. You guys, as a group, will collaborate to come up with a claim that describes the relationship you see between the x and y variables, and then postulate or think about a reason why that might be happening. And to Amy's point earlier about islands not necessarily being islands, you're going to see islands like creosote bushes, islands that are real islands, and then a national park can be considered an island. what we'd like for you guys to do, since we've got a little bit of time, introduce yourself quickly. If you guys would select a group leader to kind of drive the discussion, Amy and I will be sweeping in and out of the breakout rooms to see how you guys are doing. And then also select a group member to report out when we come back into the main room. Here's how we think this should, here's how we envision this working. Within the 10 minutes, introduce yourselves quickly, then take a couple minutes by yourself to read the background information, get oriented to the graph. And then after, say, 2-3 minutes, begin discussing those guiding questions and that accompany the graph. Come up with consensus about the study with your claim, your evidence, and then your explanation. And it's going to be brief. You'll only have 1 minute to share out. So that'll give us, hopefully within the next 16 minutes, we've looked at 4 different pieces of evidence that support the Island Biogeography model. And then after that, we'll have a bit of time to clean up any issues there, and then we're going to look at some applications of Island Biogeography theory. So we look forward to seeing you guys in your breakout rooms. That's going to happen in a few seconds.
If anybody's not comfortable going to a breakout room, just don't go, and I'll hang out and talk to you.
Yeah, it's challenge by choice. Oh. Looks like most everybody went. So how do I move back and forth into breakout rooms? I should know that. Because I'm getting a message saying I can only join breakout room 4.
As a co-host, you should be able to jump back and forth, but if not, I should be able to just move you myself.
Okay.
Oh, you guys, I don't know why when I hit that. Go ahead.
You either click at, it's either participants or breakout rooms, and that should show you all the rooms that are there. Okay. And as a co-host, you should have the function to be able to join them if you hover over the breakout room number. So you should click breakout rooms and then hover over the number of people that are in that room, and the button should change from number to, it should say join, and you should be able to join that room.
Okay, yeah, unfortunately, I'm not getting, it's probably a Chrome issue. I don't have that.
Oh, it might be.
Join.
Is there a specific room you would like me to put you in?
I'm starting at 4, so give me about, I don't know, 30 seconds in 4, and then just bounce me around.
Okay.
I don't see where I'm going to breakout rooms either. Where were you saying that?
You should be able to click at the bottom of the screen. It should, one of the buttons should say breakout rooms. And if you click on that, it should show you which room you should be in.
Yeah, I don't see my.
I'm going to hit 4, Ty, and then I'll just bounce out in a sec.
Okay.
I don't know why I don't see breakout rooms.
Maybe, is it because you're sharing your screen? I'm not sure.
It could be, but it looks like we've got one person in the main room.
Should I stop sharing? Or
since we have one person in the
I don't even see where people are. I don't see any of that. I don't see that there's people in the main room or anything.
It might probably be because you're sharing your screen and it just makes everyone smaller. So it's hard to see everyone. Oh. But we do still have one person in the break, or still in the main session.
I see breakout rooms now.
Do the breakout rooms have a running timer? Was it assigned with time or?
Yeah, I hope it should show to them too. If I set a timer correctly, it should show for them as well. Then yeah, it should be showing. We're at closing in on 6 minutes.
Really? So they've had 4 minutes. Okay. So I was in breakout room 4 and they're still digesting the information.
Yeah, it moves fast. It's
Yeah.
I know, it's just the nature of virtual meetings.
And can they call out to us in the main room if they have a question?
Put a chat.
Yes, in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Hey, Ty, just like pop me in maybe room 1. Let me stay 3 seconds.
There you go.
Cool. Thanks.
Amy, if you decide that you want to stick to the 10 minutes in the breakout room, it might be helpful to broadcast them a message, when they have 3 or so minutes.
Okay.
So
3 minutes left. Okay.
Ty, is that automatically going to close then, or you still are going to manually close it, correct?
It will close in 10 minutes, and then at that 10-minute mark, it has like a automatic 60-second timer.
Right.
That'll just show for them and let them like wrap up their ideas before it kicks them
And
back.
how many minutes do they have left?
We're closing on 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Is there a certain point that you would like me to broadcast a message out, maybe at the 3-minute mark, like Javier said? Just letting them know they have 3 minutes left. Okay.
Yeah. Can we give them an extra minute or 2? I think timing-wise, we're probably okay.
Yeah, if you would like to give them extra time, I'm pretty sure when it closes, it'll give me the option to like keep the breakout room still open, and I'll just let them stay there for an extra minute if you would like.
Right, Ryan, I think we have enough time that we can give them an extra 2 minutes. Should we do that? Right now, there's only 5 minutes left in their breakout room.
Yeah, we need to give them more time. They're all like just getting oriented to these data. It's so funny, Amy, because like we've been looking at these things for a year, right? And it's fascinating. They're taking their time. So
we're okay timing wise. So I think we should give them like an extra 3 minutes.
Okay. So at the 3-minute mark, I'll push out a message saying there's 3 minutes left, but I'll also let them know that we'll be adding an additional 3 minutes since we're running a little bit fast or running good on time right now.
Yeah.
And then they should have enough time. So they still now have 5 or 6 minutes left.
Just under 4.
But with the additional
flying by.
Oh, with the additional time, yes.
And that'll be enough time. Like it might take them a little bit to get into it, but once they get into it, they're gonna be fine. Like it'll go quickly then, once they actually get started.
Yeah. Hey, Ty, can you pop me in room 2? This is, should have it memorized, but we'll look. Thanks, sir.
I'm going to go to room 4. Have you been in room 4, Ryan?
I've been in 4. I have not been in 3.
Would you?
Been in 4?
Where's it?
Yeah, I've been.
Timer moved a little fast on me. I didn't realize it was just under the 3-minute mark when I pushed that message out.
I think it'll be okay. It feels like sufficient time.
Good. Just making sure. I'm trying to make sure everyone gets enough time. Don't want anyone coming back flustered that they didn't get enough.
Ryan, you're muted.
I mute upon entry. That last session. They were jumping. They were having a ball.
Good. All right.
A bunch of ecologists. They look like a bunch of ecologists in there. Everybody's happy. Is Amy still out in her room? So I've been
Yes.
to, we've covered the first 4 rooms. How many do we have? Probably 6.
We only have 4 rooms. It's
Oh, really?
yeah, because we had kind of like the perfect number. You guys wanted about like 4 to 5 in the room, and like minus the HHMI staff members that are on the call right now.
Okay.
It worked out pretty well.
Good, good. Let me jump back into 4 just so I can see what they were very quiet when they started.
Back in the 4, one moment. There you go.
Thanks. So Amy's in there. I'm gonna look and see, so I can actually tell which data point they're on.
I just pushed out another message letting them know that their 3 additional minutes have started and will rejoin at roughly about 1:30 Eastern.
Okay, cool. Hey, Todd, feel free to just throw me in 1, see what's going on in there.
Throwing 1? Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
So Amy's hung up in 4, unless.
Okay.
So far, so good. Everybody's smiling. They're working. They're looking at the data. They're coming up with specific claims. This is working out. This is good.
That's great to hear. That's everything you wanna see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I might just quit while I'm ahead. Don't look again, right? COVID cases are down. Stop looking. Amy, everybody's doing great.
They're doing great. Hey, sorry, I don't know why. Can I just try clicking this? I don't know why it went to that file and why it didn't like play the video right from the slide.
Mm.
Oh, I want to share it. I want to present it.
Ty, are we bringing people back?
Why is it that it opens that up in a new tab? I guess it doesn't matter, huh?
As long as you can.
Nothing I can do about it at this point.
I just closed the rooms and it's giving them the like quick 60-second countdown. Okay. So they'll be back in just a moment.
Ryan, do you want to run asking people to share out or?
Sure. I can do that.
It's just pretty much asking them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the room I was in had the toughest graph, that data point 3s, but we had some great discussion on how you could modify it for different levels of students. 3 is the toughest one. Ryan, just make sure and reiterate that only graphs 1 and 2 are going to be published.
Okay.
But that they have the source for graphs 3 and 4.
You got it.
So they could go back and find those original.
Participants will be back in about, well, right now.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey guys, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. Let's see if we're all here. Let's look at my, yeah, 25 folks are back. Awesome. So we're going to just run through this numerically. We'll start with graph 1 and end with graph 4. Hopefully you guys have a, can you back up? There we go. So breakout room that had one that had graph 1, or you guys would please give us a quick overview of what everybody's looking at, and then what you guys interpreted from that graph. And feel free, if you can say it, and you can also share that in the chat if you've written anything down. We are ready to hear from group 1.
Yeah, I'll talk, I guess. We didn't pick a speaker. So this graph is about the species richness of island size. So we see that it's a logarithmic graph with the dependent variable being the shrub volume. And I'm sorry, the independent variable being the shrub volume, with the dependent variable being the number of species based off the size of the shrub. And we saw it's a logarithmic scale, and there was a line of best fit. So we talked about the line of best fit not necessarily going through all the data points because it's a best fit line, but we used the line of best fit to come up with a trend to determine whatever patterns we can decipher from that trend, and the correlation data is also plotted there. So those were the things we talked about. We also talked about how to communicate the relationship because it's a logarithmic scale. So even though it's a line, it's not, you don't say it's like the typical rise over run over line, but because it's a logarithmic scale, we were debating how to kind of quantify the slope.
Okay.
So if I can just add that as the size of the shrub increases tenfold between like 0.1 and 1, the number of species looked like it was increasing from about 4 to 8, which seemed like a nice fit with what you mentioned in the background of a 2-fold increase in species corresponding to a 10-fold increase in size.
That's awesome, because that's what Wilson mentioned in the film, right? That
yeah.
You saw that relationship, and that's great. Would your students have caught that? Like and again, we can guide them to that when we ask them to cite evidence to support their claim, but great job.
Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna keep going just to make sure we don't run out of time, and we can address questions all at the end.
Okay, thanks, Amy. So group 2, you guys were looking at not continents, but I believe creosote bushes. Tell us what you learned.
We didn't quite get to the point where we selected a person, so I'm volunteering myself.
Okay.
Yay. We really wanted a map to go with this. There's this big gap here. There's a lot of data points here. There's a lot of data points here, but there's this big gap where there's no bushes.
Ah.
So we didn't particularly, we wanted more information. The only claim we could come up with was bugs go where the bushes are. And are there no bushes where there aren't data points, or were those bushes not colonized for some reason? It does show a general trend that the further away you are, the less likely you are to get recolonization by your arthropods.
Mm-hmm.
But the R value for that line, it's, a lot of the points are very, very broadly out. It's maybe not the strongest piece of evidence ever.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, the relation, that's and it's so interesting. We haven't talked about near and far islands yet. We just talked about size, but what I would tell my students is imagine each data point is a particular bush. And so on that particular bush, I'm just looking at the first one on the lower left, it's 0.3 of a kilometer from the main source of arthropods, has 4 species. And you can even look at this as you can kind of, you've got the small island, or the near island and the far island. And your point's very well taken. Like if you look at far islands exclusively, there is a incredibly large range of recruitment of species there. But I think the general trend holds. And it's just, a map would be wonderful. I bet that they sampled not all, but they probably looked at every bush, did a random sampling of bushes in a particular environment. And that just happened to be how far away they were from the main continent or the main bush.
Would your students have generated those questions? Were you trying to think like a student when you were going through that? Or maybe if you guided them a little bit?
They would have gotten the big gap because that's pretty visual.
It's pretty visual, but it's great for generating good questions, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. So graph number 3, would like to share what they figured out about graph number 3. They had the hardest graph. They had a long passage to read.
Yeah, we did. So what we determined in looking at the 2 best fit lines, so what this is looking at is island area in the British Islands and average number of species, either European vagrants, meaning European birds that flew over, or non-European vagrants that flew over. And what we found was that island size mattered more with the European vagrants than the non-European vagrants. Another thing we talked about using the science and engineering practice of analyzing data, they included these winter visitors in this graph and talking about excess data and how that really didn't play a role, especially, they didn't give the best fit line. And so talking to our students about how not all data is necessarily required when looking at trying to determine trends.
That's brilliant. I love that. In fact, so we talk about, when I talk to my students about evidence, we talk about relevant and comprehensive. And so you've got some irrelevant data. What a great opportunity for kids to do some sense making and think about that. Great work. Thank you, guys.
And we did mention that if you were using this with more of an introductory bio class, it might be a little much for them. Maybe you would take that line off, and then maybe, there's a lot of different ways that you could modify the graph. And finally, graph number 4.
All right, talking about extinction, you got group 4, please tell us what you learned about the size of national parks and how that affects extinction rates.
Anybody from group 4 want to volunteer? Otherwise, Ryan's going to have to do it.
The group 4 link has the last graph.
Yes.
It didn't have this graph showing up.
Really?
Well, I wondered because I went into group 4 and they were looking at graph 3. So I was confused. I don't know if anybody saw this graph.
How did I screw that up? Well, okay, group 4, do you want to add anything to graph 3 before we look at graph 4?
They did. This is the graph they looked at.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody had graph 4. I don't think they did.
Kristen was in group 4.
Okay, I apologize for that.
So basically what this graph is looking at is areas in the Rocky Mountain region. And again, that idea of extinction rate, as Ryan went over when he was building his model, it doesn't mean that, oh, there was a species there and then all of a sudden it went extinct. It was this idea that when they went back and surveyed in that particular area, if they were able to find any of that particular species. So again, it didn't just, I think that's important to point out to students, it did die out. And what they saw was as the area of the park increased, the rate of extinction decreased, which is what we kind of learned when we built our initial model. So graph number 4, looking at national parks, is kind of a great segue into taking us into the last part of our presentation today, the sort of why do we care? So I think that like Wilson is a pretty cool guy, and when the kids watch that whole video on ants to grizzlies, they get pretty drawn in to his original studies. but we want to make sure they understand how we can apply this to our current study of biodiversity. So let's take a look at just a couple of minutes at the end of the Ants to Grizzlies film.
Wildlife, particularly bigger animals, they need room to roam. Well, they can't do that if there's too many human activities and if they don't have the ability to move through that sea of humanity.
But if protected areas are hemmed in, how can you make them any bigger?
I work for an organization that's called the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative. It was founded in 1993 with a vision of connecting and protecting habitat from down in Wyoming all the way to the Arctic Circle in the Yukon, a 3,200 kilometer stretch of land.
One way Y2Y reconnects existing protected habitats is by purchasing land to create a wildlife corridor, a larger continuous wilderness through which animals can move.
Our challenge in order to conserve these species over the long term is to make sure that we resolve those potentially fragmenting areas and try and reconnect them and keep them connected.
Another important way to link habitats is taking place on indigenous land in western Montana.
We're here at the south end of the Flathead Indian Reservation. This is the area where Highway 93 cuts through a really continuous block of forested area. Highway 93 is a pretty big barrier with a lot of traffic. And so previously, animals had to try to run across this highway.
The Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, with the wildlife biologists here, successfully lobbied for the construction of bridges and passages to connect habitats severed by Highway 93.
We're in a really unique area because we have the overpass over here that allows animals to walk over the highway. And then we also have associated underpasses here that let species walk under. Now that we've come into the underpass, the sound is different. The traffic volume is kind of loud, but when you get in here, it's muffled. It's not as loud. You can hear the creek running through the middle. It sounds more natural. In the middle of the summer, wildlife will just lay in these things for hours. They'll be drinking water. They'll just be resting. They can see things coming toward them, so they have some ability to see predators approaching, and it's just kind of cozy. For now.
For an animal. My kids loved that line. So what a great way to come back to Wilson's original theory of island biogeography, this general universal principle that helps us understand community ecology and how we can use that species area relationship to solve some current loss of biodiversity problems.
Yes, and so the inset here is sort of thinking about this, the protected habitat as well as the Yukon corridor is really sort of a incredible example of an extremely large island here in the western part of North America to maximize species richness in this part of the world. We're really on our continent, I would say. I know we're super short on time, but something that I think about as a native Westerner now living in the Southeast is how the National Park Service and Fish and Wildlife have set up national wildlife refuges throughout the Southeast, really they may be postage stamped in size, but because they're relatively close together, it allows migratory waterfowl to have a safe place to breed, to eat, and to be sustained. Here in Alabama, we're pretty land proud, so there's not a ton of public land, but our power company has done a great job of preserving the reservoirs that we use to generate a little bit of hydroelectric power, preserving that coastline to be not developed so that folks have not only a place where we can recreate, but also to maintain species richness for our aquatic resources. It's just And what I would encourage you guys to do is look where you live and look for ribbon parks and creeks that have greenways. All of those things were designed for a higher quality of life for Homo sapiens. But the benefit is that those green spaces and those linear parks really create corridors to maximize reproductive space for other organisms that we share the earth with.
You know, and just one closing comment, and I'm going to go ahead and put up the evaluation while we're doing this. I just think it's really important to give kids a positive message sometimes. I think there's just so many problems that we present when we talk about environmental issues, that showing them some really positive solutions and things that that they can have a little bit of control over perhaps in their local community is super important. Does anybody have any questions or comments? If you'd like to just unmute and jump in with any quick questions or comments, and you can, one of two ways, either the bit.ly link or the QR code there, that you can do a quick survey. Please make sure and do the survey. If we were live, we'd be throwing out t-shirts and stuff right now for people answering questions. So we really hope that, cross your fingers, for 2022, we have an NSTA live conference.
Thank you guys so much for coming, and yeah, definitely fill out that survey. And we didn't have our email